Hi everyone, I'm Jess Minton. I'm a project manager with DAS42, and I've spent the majority of my professional experience helping clients see, understand, and take action with their data.
And I am Jeff Springer, a principal at DAS42. I've been here for 8 years. And my role is really to work closely with our clients, understand exactly where they're trying to go, the business requirements involved. Then I'll architect a solution to meet those requirements, deliver exactly what the client needs, and then work closely with the project team to ensure that they've got all the tools they need to implement the solution and that we stay flexible when requirements change. And then as the project progresses, client and I will identify what's next, what's further down the road for them and their data strategy as it matures.
Is that all? Wow. It sounds like you do quite a lot every day. So today, Jeff and I will be talking about architecting efficient, cost-effective Snowflake solutions in the real world. So Jeff, when you're architecting a data solution, how do you stay focused on the business outcomes rather than just building cool technology that a client has heard about that's the latest in the marketplace?
I mean, the only real reason to build a data solution is to make the business better, however that is defined, however better is defined, to give them better insights so they can make better and faster decisions. That makes the discovery piece perhaps the most important step in the process. To me, you can talk about cool tech, but there's nothing cooler than seeing a client's eyes light up when they realize we've given them insights that they've never had, or that we've just given them back hours in their week. For me, cool is often complex and overly so. It really just boils down to, did you solve the business problem?
You mentioned the first step in your process. Let's talk a little bit more about that, from the problem all the way to the solution. Talk me through the process from like the first client conversation where we know that there's something that could be improved upon, or maybe a big glaring problem, to bringing a data architecture to bear that solves it.
That's somewhat of a tough question because every project's different, obviously. Not only are clients searching for solutions to different problems, but they're also at different points in their data maturity. Fundamentally, though, the first step is really to approach the conversation from a business perspective. And you're going to hear me say that a lot, I think, because I think it's missed often in our business. Now, that doesn't mean that I know everything there is to know about a client's business. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's, for me, going into the discovery phase and having the client explain their business to me and the problems that as they see them, I can get a better understanding of where the real needs and requirements are, where the real pitfalls are, where the real roadblocks are going to be. So the point is, it's a business conversation first. We begin at the end, and then the tech comes later.
Such a great point. Beginning with the end in mind, I think, is the only way to make sure you're going to truly solve some of those problems. You also mentioned that so much depends on the business, and the audience is so important as a part of the solution, since ultimately it will be for them. For Zayo, a telco company where you've done quite a lot of work, you were able to consolidate over 30 different data sources into a single source of truth using Snowflake. How did you approach that problem? 30 data sources is certainly a lot, and I know there are a lot of other organizations that probably are using that many or more. What did the architecture need to do?
Yeah, well, it's 30 and growing. But Zayo was built primarily through acquisitions. They've had some 47, I think, in the past 5 years alone. And that results in data being siloed throughout the organization. And it makes it almost impossible to get answers to even the most basic questions, like, what's our monthly recurring revenue? Because it's coming from so many different sources, right? So to solve that, we needed a solution that didn't just pull in data from a myriad of different sources, but normalizes it and presents it to the business decision makers in a way that's structured, standard, trusted. And really, this is where Excel Snowflake excels by building upon a single data platform where data can be consolidated, transformed, enriched, analyzed. We're able to bring all those data sources together and speed the integration of those new acquisitions. It also helps that Snowflake is built not just for analytics, but AI and ML applications as well. This ensures that we're building something that will continue to support Zayo well into the future, and any future use cases that might come along in their maturation.
That's a great point, that Snowflake is at the forefront of everything that's happening in the data space with AI. Obviously, you've done a lot of work extensively with Snowflake here at DAS42. What makes Snowflake work really well as a data platform for an organization to develop the foundation for their AI solutions?
Yeah, great question. Since the beginning, and we've been involved with Snowflake nearly since the beginning, their philosophy is bringing the tool to the data. Before Snowflake, it was always data had to move to the tool, that's just complex and costly to do. So by bringing the data or the tool to the data, it means you get tight integration with the top large language models out there, AI and ML applications available right in the market. Most of them live right in Snowflake, so your data never really needs to leave the platform. And it's a huge benefit. Moving data, like I said, is expensive. It's time consuming. And LLMs and AI ML applications need a lot of data. So by accessing everything right within the Snowflake platform, all those headaches go away. Your data's right there. Tools right there. You can train it. You can get your inferences back quickly and productionalize it all within the platform.
It's so powerful. There's so much robust capability within the Snowflake ecosystem. How do you balance keeping things simple, which you've said helps keep costs down, helps keep things really efficient, while also using a lot of those robust capabilities?
I mean, Snowflake's capabilities themselves make things simple and more efficient and cost effective. I keep saying this, but moving data is expensive and time consuming. And when you don't have to move that data, when you bring the tool to the data, everything just gets simpler. For example, like on most platforms, you would need to unload your data to your MI or AI ML platform for training and predictive analytics to build that model. And that would use a ton of data. After it's trained, you need to supply the same platform with your current data, the data that's coming in, whatever cadence, hourly, daily, whatever, so that it can make its predictions and inferences. And then periodically, you'd need to send more data to the platform for another round of training, just to make sure it doesn't drift out of whack. All that data movement adds time, cost, and most of all, complexity, because now you run the risk of losing data. You run the risk of not actually pushing the data that you should be pushing to the platform. So with Snowflake, bring the model to your data. It's trained in Snowflake. It runs in Snowflake. It produces the inferences right in Snowflake. It's immediately available for analytics and business decisions. Reduces all the complexity.
There really is so much efficiency to be gained with that central component of Snowflake and having everything right there. It's pretty awesome. How do you think about when to adopt some of the newer platform capabilities versus sticking with something that already works? What are the criteria that you use to think about a problem like that?
Well, I mean, we're not afraid to be on the bleeding edge and make sure we stay attuned to, what's coming up, what the next hotness is. We're only 3 years past the GPT and how it electrified the world, but it's already somewhat trite to say that AI is the future. But I think the question that everyone's trying to answer is, what can it do for me? We're all trying to productionalize it now, and we need to know how to do that. And so I think that's the question every new platform needs to answer. They have to have worked out or have a plan for integrating AI. It just can't be bells and whistles, There has to be some meaningful impact on human productivity. It can't just give you advice on how to use that particular tool or any other tool like Microsoft Clippy from 20 years ago. It has to increase productivity and in a meaningful and measurable way. It has to impact people's lives.
That's such a key thing to remember, I think, to make the outcomes measurable. So you can really understand the impact that any solution is having, and especially something as cutting edge as some of the new AI solutions that we're seeing. And also really interesting to hear your perspective that saying AI is the future is trite. It's like, it's here, it's happening. We're doing it now.
It's the present.
It is, it's the present. Jeff, most of your recent work has been in the telecommunications space. And I would love to talk a little bit more about Zayo in particular. What have you found is unique about data challenges for telco versus some of the things that are universally applicable to anybody who's on a data journey?
I guess the thing that most quickly pops into my head, and it's not necessarily unique, but telcos create a lot of data. I mean, by definition, their devices are constantly communicating, telling you how they're doing, how their neighbors are doing, how their destinations are doing. That's a lot of data. And some of that data is just chatter, but oftentimes hidden in there, there's also clues about whether a device is going to fail soon, or who's using it, security breaches. And so we have to have systems that can not only handle that much data, but also pull those clues out, so we can get solutions to problems before they occur. We can predict when they're going to happen, and act on them before it becomes a problem for their customers. Beyond that, telco is a business. It's got assets and liabilities, employees, customers, partners, and all of that data needs to be timely, accurate, and accessible to the folks who need to keep the business thriving, who need to make business decisions every day.
That's such a great point that they are generating so much of their own data. And I love thinking about that as mostly benign and sometimes not useful, but being able to predict the little bits of chatter that are important and use that is so critical. And there have very recently been some notable telco outages that I certainly wonder if some of those could have been prevented. I'm sure there are people out there thinking about that question right now. How can we prevent future problems for our customers? I'm sure will also be a data solution somewhere down the road.
Yeah. I mean, imagine being able to tell your customer, hey, if you have to suffer through the glitch or the outage or whatever, being able to tell them, hours before it happens, hey, we're going to have this situation here in a little bit. Nothing we can do about it, but we'll get you back up and running as quickly as we can. That gives your customers time to prepare, and that gives them time to fix things on their end.
So our project work with Zayo started during one of the acquisitions. Earlier, you mentioned that they've had over 40 acquisitions. What's happening with data during the merger and acquisition process that makes it so challenging? And why is that such a critical moment to bring in data experts?
Actual acquisitions are painful from just about every angle. But from a data perspective, it's always messy. The company being acquired, certainly won't be using all the platforms the acquiring company uses. So decisions need to be made on, whether to adopt that platform or just keep the data siloed. How do we map the data to the acquiring company's platform? Or maybe even keep the data at all. And, typically we hate that last choice the most. All data is precious. But even when the acquired company uses the same platform, it's guaranteed that they haven't implemented it in the same way as the acquiring company has. I'm thinking of tools like Salesforce or ServiceNow, which are tremendously flexible tools and platforms. No two companies have ever implemented those platforms in the same way. So you need essentially a forensic analysis on both systems to understand how best to integrate the data and then plan that integration out. And it also helps if you've already architected a solution that can deal with that complexity before the acquisition even arrives. The architecture that we've built at Zayo is built on open source tools, open source platforms that ensure that we can grab data from anywhere and quickly integrate it into Zayo's data.
I've worked through several post M&A data spaces as well, and I'm sure many people can attest to the kinds of problems that you're describing, including that one company and another are almost certainly not at the same point in their data maturity journey. So if perhaps one company is very advanced and already doing a lot with predictive analytics and AI, and perhaps the other is a bit more reactive and only in a place where they can just see the here and now of how the business is doing. And that alone can cause issues, in addition to everything that you said. When you first engage with a new client, how do you assess where they are in their data maturity? Like, what do you look for?
Yeah, that's also a tough question, because while data maturity is theoretically a continuum, in reality, it's much more haphazard than that. Companies, like you just said, companies don't mature at the same rate across all aspects of their business. Finance might have some really great analytics and forecasting models based on Excel worksheets or something, while operations is still routing service through printed tickets. So the trick is to understand where everyone's at, and what tools they're using, how they're using them, where the pain points are with those tools, and what would make their lives easier. How can we get them to a point where the tool we give them and the pipelines that we set up for them, make it just as easy as the tools they have and everyone else has.
Oh my goodness, printed tickets. What a time. It's possible. When you think about maybe an organization who is pretty early on in that journey, what are some of the things that could help accelerate their move towards solutions like AI, even though that might seem like it's really far away?
We always start with the business problem. What's the client trying to accomplish? And that drives what gets addressed first. Well, this typically means we need to look at the data platform first. We don't go into a project with this preconceived notion. It might just be that the data platform is adequate for now, but what the business really needs is to make the data available to more decision makers, or maybe the data just needs some fine tuning. But the point is we begin at the end again, and don't automatically assume that there's a problem with the tech stack. Might not even be a technological problem at all. It might just be in case of change management.
We've been talking about the data maturity curve, so I sort of assume that we don't think of this as a linear progression. In your experience, Jeff, what are the points where you usually see companies need to make the biggest jump? What are some of the biggest hurdles for them to progress?
Yeah. And that's another tough question, just because, like you said, that the data maturity curve isn't, in reality, a continuum. It's, you jump around on it a bit. But if I were to pick one thing that people tend to have a hard time with is, inevitably we're coming in, we're changing some tools on them. And people tend to fall in love with the tools that they're most familiar with, the tools that they've been using, their entire business life. And that's reasonable, right? I completely understand it. Learning a new tool takes time. It's painful. There's, it puts people out of their comfort zone. Like Microsoft Excel, everybody uses it. And I've seen some people do some amazing things with them. I've built some pretty cool complex spreadsheets I'm probably overly proud of myself. So getting them to change to something new is usually pretty tough, and not to be taken on without a good bit of empathy. And in my opinion, the only way to justify the use of a new tool is if it helps you do your job better and faster. As the folks recommending that new tool, we need to be able to prove that our recommendation meets those two requirements at the very least. In addition to that, we need to ensure the results presented by the tool are accurate. You only get one chance to make a good first impression. And even if the tool's just awesome, everybody loves it, it's a net benefit. If it's returning bad information that can't be trusted, you will lose your audience. And it's very difficult to get them back.
How do you tailor your approach based on the client's maturity level? What works with an early stage data team as opposed to a more mature organization?
I would say early stage data teams are typically trying to help the business answer just basic questions. What's our revenue? What's our sales? They might currently have answers to these questions, but they're usually multiple answers. Like finance has their numbers for revenue, but they're different from sales, and that makes for very uncomfortable meetings. In addition, those teams they're usually pretty small. People wear a lot of different hats. So it's easier to move quickly and get decisions made quickly. But more mature organizations, they're trying to answer deeper questions. Why did revenue drop last month? What do our customers think of us? Really mature organizations are performing predictive analytics, right? What will our revenue be if we raise prices 3%? What's our churn going to be if we do that? If we do X, will that make our customers happier? So these teams, they're focused on, questions that aren't at the surface. They're not immediately available. They're also much larger. People tend to perform more specialized roles. So it's important to establish a solid plan and engage with all the parties at the beginning to ensure any blockers or, any blockers to progress are ID'd as early as possible so they can be addressed.
So true. And also, if in this day and age, if a tool is underperforming, if it's slow, that is a deal breaker. Thankfully, I think we've had great experiences with Snowflake being very performant and certainly focus a lot on fine-tuning it. Okay, Jeff, you're in the hot seat. You've got 30 seconds. If you are talking to a company that's ready to leverage AI and they don't know where to start, what's the one thing you wish they'd prioritize that most other companies do not?
Again, I want to be very careful here because every situation is different. However, it's unequivocally true that AI and ML use cases depend upon data. And the adage that garbage in results in garbage out has never been more true. So if there's one thing to prioritize, it's the quality, completeness, and even volume of data. Many companies, they just want to jump right into AI because it's the new hotness, or they've been given direction from their superiors to do it, without clear expectations of the results because, nobody really knows. So, they want to get on the bandwagon and they don't realize the wagon has no wheels on it. So in my opinion, this is more dangerous than not implementing AI at all. Yeah, you're going to get answers. It's going to be cool. You're going to say, hey, I've got this AI model working, but can you trust them? Making decisions for your company based on information you can't trust, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Please visit DAS42.com/connect to learn more about how we can help you move to the next phase in your data maturity journey.